Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is a Maverick channel. We've been essentially talking about crypto the whole time ever since this channel started, and we like especially talking about real world use cases of cryptocurrencies and applications. Now, there's a particular project that I've been extremely excited about for about 2.5 years now, and that's called Fetch.ai. There's a bunch of other projects that I talk about, all the way from Bitcoin to other tokens, other ecosystems, NFTs, and all that. But I was mostly fascinated about Fetch.ai because of their implementation of AI, machine learning, and these multi-agent system kind of technologies that allow software in modules to communicate with each other in different ways. So of course, the ecosystem has evolved over time, and that's why today we've brought essentially the community spokesperson of Fetch.ai. So this person, John, or Atari buzzk1LL on the social media platforms, that he goes by that name. He's the specialist essentially to break down where Fetch is right now compared to where it was in the past. So all the developments, all the new stuff. John, if you can allow me as a guest, welcome to my show. Very, very humbled to have you here. It's a pleasure. And I'm going to give you the platform for most of the time to sort of give us a rundown of what is happening with this Fetch ecosystem. But you can introduce yourself as well officially to the people so they may know who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be on the show because, yeah, I know that you've got a community following behind you. And so it's always nice to be able to, of course, interact more with the community, as that's what I really love to do here. Right. So, yeah, as you had already said, most people online know me as Atari, but my name is actually John, and I'm the Associate Community and Business Developer for Fetch.ai. And so, yeah, pretty much when it comes to updates and things that are going on, I'm your guy in this case. And
okay.
Yeah, there have been a lot of developments that have been happening lately. We've been just firing off like a bunch of things that we're very, very excited about, and even just, past things that have just recently happened with conferences being gone to and, things being shown off. So, yeah, if there's anything you wanted to start off with, like we can start from there.
Okay. I mean, thank you for that, John. I mean, clearly, as you've heard, there's a lot of people, as John has said, there's a lot of things that have been happening. Now, if I'm to briefly touch upon the beginnings of Fetch.ai, it was the promise of implementing machine learning and basically being able to have a framework, an infrastructure where any company, individual can easily manipulate machine learning algorithms very easily. So the democratization of that kind of power, I found it very intriguing. So essentially, I think the blockchain is finding its own way, or Fetch.ai, the company is finding its own way of implementing these features. The blockchain side, the scalability side with the agents, there's so many things going on, but they need to be packaged properly. And John becomes the perfect person to talk about this. So in the past, let me first talk about, maybe you've had some partnerships on Fetch.ai, like some big industrial partnerships like Festo and such, and Bosch Global. Could you maybe say something about how that is going right now, considering they were one of the first major partnerships, if there is something to say about that, since considering they were one of the first major partnerships that Fetch.ai has ever had in its operations?
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk too much about it because, yeah, NDAs and whatnot, they kind of are always going to be there, especially with larger companies and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the basic simple concept of what even a company like Bosch set out to utilize the technology for, and I believe that this is also kind of out there already, like listed, is that they wanted to utilize the machine learning technology to try and find essentially like points of failure, like within different pieces of technology that they were developing. So the point of it was to, instead of having to continuously, humanly test over and over and over again, to be able to utilize the machine learning aspects of the Fetch framework in hopes that they would be able to identify like those issues that are ongoing or could be potential dangers and be able to stop them before they actually even happen. And obviously, to some degree, some people would say like a centralized model would be able to like do a thing in a similar fashion. But the great thing, once again, about Fetch is that it comes at about like a fraction of the cost, which is why, like you had said even earlier, with us wanting to enable just anybody, not even just companies, but anybody to be able to utilize machine learning and AI like tools, is that when it's a decentralized like framework involved with that, the cost of it is much lower because you're not having to maintain the servers like yourself personally. You're not having to maintain the tooling like staying up like yourself. You're utilizing like existing infrastructure that an entire community of people is behind. And so it ends up making that process a lot better. And overall, I would say from a transparency standpoint, being that obviously like if you're performing, these things and utilizing decentralized technology, it's a lot more transparent and open, and also like, I guess not necessarily copyable, but the information is easier to pass along. And instead of it being all siloed, which is really what the current state of information and data holds are, is just siloed information where companies don't want to release information or pass things on. It's all kept within databases that are just secured to just themselves. And so in this case, it allows these models to be trained, and it's a lot more open in that way. So there's a lot of benefits to utilizing something like that instead of just paying in-house for a centralized model that who knows how much it'll end up like costing you. And on top of that, like it's a scalable model where you can continue working off of it. So yeah, it's really that's mainly what they are doing. That's as much as I can really go into about their utility there.
Okay. Thank you for that. So seeing that Fetch was able to capture such partnerships, and in the background, whatever they're developing, I guess it's as the Fetch.ai ecosystem develops, they also adopt the technology and see how it can fit into their narrative. So you've mentioned a couple of competitive advantages that Fetch.ai has, I guess, in terms of replicability. I guess it should be kind of difficult to replicate some of these softwares that are being implemented. But what I wanted to ask, how can you distinguish between the Fetch technology from just a simple smart contract? And also, could you talk about a little bit about things like self-sovereign identity? Because we've seen Andreessen Horowitz make a bunch of investments in play to earn and all kinds of ecosystems within the crypto ecosystem. So the privacy thing, self-sovereign identity, and the competitive advantage. I mean, if you could tie these points into how Fetch, because Fetch runs on the Cosmos blockchain. So how does this facilitate all this technology, and how can we draw a distinction between the core technology, which is the multi-agent systems or the bots that's supposed to be here, and the actual blockchain, which is supposed to be the Fetch blockchain? There's a lot of products being built on top of the Fetch blockchain. So how does that work exactly to have the core technology, which was the beginning of Fetch, and the blockchain itself? How do they link with each other?
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that the core blockchain itself is obviously where finality happens. It's essentially where all of the transactions, all of the like smart contract data and all of that stuff ends up being stored. And the actual agent system itself is leveraging like that technology for the like finality aspect of all of those things. And it does also utilize the like actual, whether it's the test net or the main net, like the agents can be built upon either of those. And they do actually still leverage the decentralized system that's in place. So all the validators and such that are actually running, they're like essentially running on top of like that layer. So as long as those things are up, like the agents continue to run and the agents continue to do those jobs. So the actual framework that is built there, it relies on the underlying blockchain to be like up and running and existing for the agents to be doing like what they're doing. So and yeah, I was just gonna say as well, you had mentioned the idea of what kind of separates, I guess, the AI or the agents aside from smart contracts, like just regular smart contracts. And like that's the thing, is that with regular smart contracts, they're typically built to perform an action. They have like a set objective that they end up doing, and if you perform that transaction, their intention hopefully is to execute it in the way that they were told to. And so long as everything is coded properly, everything is said like is signed on the other side by the actual user, then the transaction should go through and smart contract executes. But with agents, they're kind of like, I guess you could see them as more complex smart contracts, in the sense that they may have like goals that they have set out in mind, such as,
Mhm.
if a user were, let's say that there was like an application where you were wanting to find like a parking spot or something, and then their objective was to find you a parking spot and then also negotiate with another agent to, figure out pricing and then secure you a spot. In that sense, obviously, there's a lot more moving parts than just a single smart contract executing and then a thing happening, because
Mhm.
there's communication essentially between these contracts. So the
Right.
agents are like more complex, able to learn like smart contracts. In a sense, I would consider them like actually smart, in the idea that they are capable of learning from what they are doing and improving upon what they've actually learned.
Without
So
needing that human input in order for them
yeah,
to improve. Like, should be able to do it on their own.
and
Mm.
that's kind of as I had said, mentioning the aspect of, you wanting to find a parking spot, but it being the agents that are needing to communicate between each other. They don't need the human intervention. They just already have the information you've provided them, and they can just communicate with each other and come to a conclusion for, finding you a spot and having the payment sent. So
Right.
yeah, that's kind of the aspect of it that makes them much more complex, and I guess to a lot of degrees more impressive than just a simple smart contract. Is just, obviously, like you said, having finalization being activated just by human interaction on a smart contract and requiring your input in that way. And it also only being able to execute like core functions is quite different than what the agents themselves end up doing.
Right, right. So that dynamic nature of them that you've talked about essentially could allow them to act as scalability for a scalability function, because as you've said, they could easily be attached to the blockchain, or they could be existing off the blockchain, but within a particular framework, they can still communicate with one another. So
Exactly.
yeah, so that's really amazing. So does that mean that you can have other applications such as maybe data, Oracle data applications? Because if they understand, if they can negotiate with each other, and they can improve upon each other, does that mean they can be used for a very important feature, which is basically transferring data? Because a few months ago, I was reading the blockchain that's mostly known for Oracle data, Chainlink. I was reading the
Chain
Chainlink
link,
white
yes.
paper, yes, and I was reading some of their progression, where they're trying to go in the future, and I could draw very similar parallels with what Fetch.ai was actually developing, or if you read the document. So it got me thinking, things like scalability. Could we see these agents actually playing a role, or joining blockchains? Since Fetch.ai is built on the Cosmos ecosystem, could they actually serve this purpose, or what is the main focus right now? Is it because, and also I've noticed a lot of products being built on top of the Fetch blockchain. So how much do these products, how much can they leverage the Fetch.ai blockchain on its own, the machine learning technology on its own, and the agents on their own? Or what, for example, of those three parts, which of them can be leveraged at the same time, or very easily used? Because I've noticed some social media platforms are being built on Fetch.ai. You can already trade NFTs. I was looking at some other platforms that are being built, like Mobix, which is Move to Earn. So all these are different parts of the machine that are working in their own way, and I see these are different products that are being built on this ecosystem. So uh, how do they, I'm still trying to figure out how this can easily be built upon, especially for developers. And recently Fetch.ai came into some money, 150 million. So also maybe giving some light on what kind of companies, what kind of projects that Fetch.ai is looking at in terms of expansion of their blockchain. I think that is the answer that I was trying to get to, or rather, the question I was trying to get to. If Fetch.ai was looking to further expand their investments or their blockchain, what kind of use cases would they want to see, or would be possible to be built upon them?
Yeah, honestly, we really want, because the whole point of the Fetch network is, of course, to be an ecosystem. Our hope is to see a wide variety. Like, if anything, we want to see like as much automation being added to things as possible. There are so many
Mhm.
processes where it is manual, like transactions that are having to be like taking place, or to have things that are more, I guess, more complicated than they might necessarily need to be. And so Yeah, there's a lot of things that we are obviously with the fund that has been put out there that we've announced and also been speaking about on our Twitter and other socials. We
Mhm.
have been in talks with projects and trying to onboard different projects, and they can be a wide like variety of things, like whether it's from tooling to actual like applications and projects being built on chain. Yeah, there's not really, I guess, a main goal because the whole point is supposed to be that this automation, this AI is going to be there for everyone. So if somebody has an idea and they say, hey, it could be the most outlandish thing you could think of, or maybe something you would never even consider of it being like, oh, yeah, that process would be so much easier if it was just like automated and I didn't even have to think about it. And
Mhm.
so anybody like that is coming in with ideas of being able to automate processes is somebody that we're interested in, because we don't want it to be, kind of where we're pinned into a corner of where we're only going after specific projects or we're only going
Right.
after specific use cases, because there's of course like real world use cases where, as I talked about before with the parking thing of people who are wanting to go into the real world, find a parking spot and have it negotiated between agents to be able to do stuff like that. But then you might also have, a different project that is wanting to purely build like financial tooling, where their
Right.
goal is to try and help those who are maybe in areas that are less developed and are trying like are struggling like financially, and so
Mhm.
automated tools for being able to access DeFi and stuff like that could be extremely helpful for a lot of people.
Right.
So
And I think that goes into one of the products that I was looking at, which is the botswap on Fetch.ai, which essentially, the way I was looking at that product, I mean, for example, if you look at what happened with Terra Luna, I mean, my speculation was that if we can see expansion of some of these projects, because basically what you're talking about, I've done a little bit of research in some of the products being built, and one of the bullish ones that I'm really enthusiastic about is the botswap, because of the ability to easily move liquidity from any the listed DeFi exchanges. You have two tokens, you can easily swap them automatically, and I've used it. So that was ingenious. And I think that's one of the biggest products that Fetch.ai, in my opinion, needs to really expand, because the community, I think, really needs it. In terms of, for example, if you're holding Luna and UST, you could have swapped the Luna for UST, and you could have maybe saved some of your funding at a 70 cent UST, as opposed to just losing everything. So I
oh
think,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
I
very
really think. Sorry, I was just gonna say, yeah, I really do
mm,
think that, if that was the case, where unfortunately BotSwap hasn't made it onto mainnet yet, or to places like
right.
Osmosis or even
Hmm.
like Terra chains and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, that would have been like the exact perfect reason for something like that, is that
Right.
that danger does exist. And I think that the utility in bot swap is kind of now proven through what just
Hmm.
happened, because it's no
Hmm.
longer just, oh, I want to leverage myself or throw myself
Right.
into a pool
It's
with
actually
crazy
needed.
high. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not just like, oh, I found this meme coin and I'm
Hmm.
worried it might go to zero, so I'll just do this. It's like, well, now top 10 projects have proven themselves to be able to have a fall from grace like that. So
Right.
almost anything that is being put into a liquidity pool or being put into, if you're even holding it, as you had mentioned of the swap functionality as well, where it can auto swap once
Hmm.
prices reach a certain point. Yeah,
Hmm.
I do believe that if that was the case, it would have been something that was way different. Because if I'm not wrong, and I could be, I believe that there was actually a bridge from Terra even into like Ethereum dexes
Right.
and Binance Smart Chain. So if that was the case, that because we have bot swap enabled on things like Pancake Swap,
Hmm.
as well as
Uniswap as well, I
as well
think.
as
Yeah.
Uniswap is there too.
Mhm.
So if there was a case where somebody had their Luna or even UST, for that matter, using
That
bot
would have
swap,
been that would have been
it
really
could have
helpful.
saved you. Yeah, it could have
Yeah.
literally, like, because those projects, like, there was, and actually funny enough, I saw there was a large YouTuber, KSI. He had
Hmm.
I saw his tweet of saying that he just decided to throw in $1 million, I think it was, into Luna as it was falling,
Oh my
hoping that
gosh.
he was gonna catch the falling knives.
Catch the
And
falling knot. Yeah.
And he unfortunately ended up turning that into, I think, a couple $1,000 was what it was left off with by the end of it. And so it makes me think once again, like if there was a scenario like where there was the ability to use that, if you could use something like botswap and you set a stop loss at that certain value to swap out for a stable coin.
It does it as you're asleep.
Yeah, exactly. He could have went to bed, woken up, and been like, "Oh, that really sucks that happened, but I'm so happy that I still have what I have left."
Right.
So yeah,
I think as Fetch moves forward, it's technologies like such that have not even yet been properly discovered, that I think have a lot of potential. When you try to look at the whole blockchain space and how big it is, you're trying to look for that competitive advantage. And you mentioned somewhere finality, which is extremely important. And of course, speaking to that Luna situation, the Terra Luna situation, the amount of volume that's flowing through the ecosystem, to see that the Cosmos ecosystem on top of which Fetch is built was actually able to be resilient and not see any drastic movements in the transaction, in the prices or the gas prices. I think the fact that Fetch, I think, picked Cosmos is perfect. Some of the biggest ecosystems, Binance and so on. So, I mean, if I'm to talk about some of the partnerships like ZoidPay, being able to pay for products out there, what is the future or the consensus event? If you can talk a little bit more about that, I don't know how much you can say or how much you know, a little bit about that. But also, there's a question I did not ask in the beginning, which is, what is your thought, before we get into that, what is your perspective of the Fetch.ai ecosystem from where it has been up to this point? How far have they come, and how is that going to tie into some of the, for example, consensus and what they're going to announce then, or some of the partnerships we've seen like ZoidPay, where you can pay for products online? How does that fit into the narrative of because, as you said, Fetch.ai is trying to capture a whole bunch of products. Is this something that clearly fits into that kind of narrative with what's being built here? Because why should someone choose Fetch over Avalanche or Solana or Atom itself? What is that X factor that's there? If that's something that could be answered.
Yeah, of course. And I think honestly, if it was a matter of, trying to choose between FET and then any other coin, I would always say, of course, regardless, that people should look around, see what because everything, sorry, I should rephrase this. You should hope that everything that is out there has a purpose, and that the reason that it was created was because there is a real vision behind it. And so if you are going to get yourself involved in other ecosystems and stuff, or even Fetch's ecosystem, you should absolutely be doing research on what it is that every token is meaning to provide, because that's extremely important. And that's the thing, is I don't even want to take this from the standpoint of going after any other projects or saying why you shouldn't go into them or come into us. But instead, I can answer, though, of why Fetch, what it is that Fetch brings to the table that just isn't really out there right now. And I mean, kind of what we've been talking about this whole time is that it's not even just simply an ecosystem chain. It's an ecosystem chain that allows you to natively automate processes, without having to run those servers yourself. There may be other chains that have the ability to, run what you're doing on there. You can build on those ecosystems, but you might have to provide your own infrastructure for wanting to be able to automate processes, or you might have to code an entire thing that allows you to be able to have automated processes. But by just utilizing our framework, you're having to do nothing out of pocket other than download some software and, code it into your program of what it is that you want to automate. And so it's...
And Fetch.ai has you have a rich... Sorry to cut you off. You have a rich documents page as well. When I look at the website, there's a whole suite of documents that could easily be accessed as far as development is concerned. Is this something that could also be helpful towards what you're talking about?
Of course,
how much information?
Yeah, that looking into the documentation is extremely important. We're actually updating our documentation pretty much every other day at this point. We're very, very heavy on trying to get the documentation to be as clean and easy to understand as possible. And obviously the main reasoning for that is that, the further along we get, we want to make it easier and easier for less technical people to be able to try and actually get their, wrap their heads around what it is that we're doing here. And so, yeah, like I would say that that's kind of the great benefit that like we have is that, you know, having the automation and the machine learning aspect be a native part of the chain that is also like leveraging the blockchain itself. Like I said, it's not an external module that has nothing to do with blockchain that is running the agents. Like the agents are powered by the FET token. And so that's an extremely like important thing because there is a bit of that, you know, the pull and tug of that where you have the more agents that can go online, the more it benefits the network because there's more utility there, but it's also because you know that those agents are being powered by FET tokens. So if there's things that are being, you know, launched or people who are making applications that utilize it, they not only bring value to the ecosystem simply by building something, but if they're using the agents, it brings literal value to the ecosystem because the agents run on FET. So yeah, it's a really like kind of complicated idea to look at, but yeah,
quite an ambitious one as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why, like I said, like I wouldn't want to say that other ecosystems and stuff don't have their reason, their niche for why they exist.
For existing. Other use cases, right?
Yeah.
Other applications. So if I may ask, John, as one of the last questions I want to sort of get into, because I think after consensus, there will be a lot of things to look at. What is the rapid growth right now seems to be sort of trying to capture the Cosmos ecosystem, get into, make sure you upgrade to, I've seen some of the recent proposals that we've had to vote on, upgrading to some of the latest Cosmosm softwares or updates. What is this aggressive sort of push towards keeping up with what's happening in the Cosmos ecosystem? Is it pushed, is it as a way to get more people involved using Fetch? And also it brings me to the point of why is the larger Cosmos ecosystem not, that they don't seem too aware of the Fetch ecosystem, and yet they're Fetch has been around for longer than most of the chains and seems to be doing something quite big. What is the thing? Is that maybe there's not too much aggressive marketing, which may not be a bad thing, since the ecosystem's being built out? What could be the major push, aggressive push towards trying to make sure all the you're on the latest updates as far as the Cosmos ecosystem is concerned, if I should say?
Yeah, so the big push for wanting to keep up, make sure that we're up to date on, you know, even patches and whatnot, and even just upgrades that happen within the Cosmos SDK and Cosmosm, firstly, is to ensure security, because usually patches are obviously issued for a good reason. It's like when people tell you, make sure all the apps on your phone are always up to date, or the browser is always up to date, because they patch it for a reason. Usually it's security related. And so, yeah, there's always like patches like that. We want to make sure people see that as well, that we're trying to constantly make sure that we're up to date with these things. And there do come improvements as well. I mean, even, you know, like one, I think in the last upgrade that we had done, it ended up allowing us to enable the, I'm trying to remember the feature name right now of what it's called. It allowed basically to auto compound like through restake, but it was, yeah, it was a feature that basically made it so that you could actually like provide permission via a smart contract for a thing that would continue onwards. It's very basic, so I guess in a sense it is automation, but once again it's that single task that it just repeats every day, and it just that like one thing. But it was basically like it came along with the newest SDK version that you could essentially sign a transaction that would be your consent to allow it to continue utilizing that transaction. But is that something?
Is that a Cosmosm software, or was it something built by Fetch?
That was an SDK. That was a Cosmos SDK feature that they ended up adding in. And so, yeah, with that, a ton of chains are utilizing it, and I think it's a really great thing. And I think the idea of using it for, you know, restaking and allowing that stuff is pretty cool. But I also think just the general idea that you can provide ongoing consent to a smart contract until you decide to retract that is also extremely useful. I mean, I can see that being utilized by, I mean, myself. I feel like I'm probably not the only person who feels this way. But myself, the way that I see it is sometimes, you know, there's applications that I want to be able to use, and every little action requires another transaction to be signed, and you have to kind of like wait that time for it to go through. I think it'd
That
be
would be really
interesting.
helpful, isn't it? The social media application.
Yeah, I
The
think that
yeah.
there could be utility done there, and so if their team
Mm,
ended up deciding to try and look more into that and utilize something like
mhm.
that, yeah, I think that like that's a really beneficial thing, because I haven't really seen other chains, like as an aside from the Cosmos ecosystem, I don't really know of any other ongoing consent contracts that kind of
Right.
exist in that sense, and I think that that's a really cool idea that you're able to utilize there. But that's what we had done in the last one. More recent ones is like security patches, and I also think that like interchain wallets is also something that I think is going to start coming up in the next upgrade and stuff like that. Which that concept is way too complicated to get into right now.
Okay.
But
Right.
it is very interesting to see where they're going with it. If you want to even just Google yourself, anybody listening, what that kind of stuff is about, you certainly
Mhm.
can take the time to do that. But yeah, the push to get into like really, I guess, have ourselves known within the Cosmos ecosystem is because at the end of the day, we are a part of it. Like
Right.
we chose this, like, you know, the Cosmos SDK as the building block for the Fetch network, not just because it was, you know, oh, like it was just a random fluke decision. It was because of what we saw in the ability for the scalability, for how many
Mhm.
transactions it could handle, modular it would allow us to
And
become.
it is.
And
Mhm.
so because of that, like we are true believers in the tech here. Like we really believe in like the tech as a whole. And so we're trying to make sure that we get ourselves in there in the ecosystem and let ourselves be known. Because as you had mentioned, at this current time, it is a little bit of a, you know, boots on the ground type scenario of having to
Mhm.
almost, you know, manually tell people of saying, yeah, we're here, we're, you know, we're on things even like Osmosis, we've enabled
Right.
IBC, we're
Mm.
building things like, you know, tooling that can be used for other chains as well. And so we're kind of getting ourselves like known out there more, because it has been just over a year now since the Fetch mainnet came out here. And
Right.
at
The
the
actual Fetch
time,
mainnet.
yeah, the
Mhm.
main focus was just getting the tech to the point where we were happy enough with it. We kind of had said that, like
Mhm.
2021 was
Mhm.
mainly about building like the tech to ensure that it was usable, and then 2022 is about having people use the tech and build
Right.
with the tech. So
Right.
pretty much that's what we've been going for, is we've been utilizing a lot of the time that we have, a lot of the resources that we have to get ourselves out there a lot more. And even at stuff like consensus, that's a great example of where we're kind of like, you know, pushing the fact that we are a Cosmos SDK chain, and we really want to, you know, speak with people who are, well, even community members can go to the thing. There's still some slots actually available. We have two
Mhm.
workshops that we're doing back to back days in Austin on June 10th and June 11th.
Mhm.
And we want to be able to, first of all, showcase what we already like have on chain, what teams have already built on chain and the applications that are there, and also
Right.
explain to people who maybe are wanting to fund projects, or even just developers who are looking to build projects,
Mhm.
the general tech stack, and explaining to them like how the processes work and how they can be utilized. And yeah, like we really want to have ourselves more known out there and have people understand that we really do care about this ecosystem. And I think as well with the idea, if I'm not wrong, I think that we've seen John Ward talk about as well, of the idea that
Mm.
agents don't have to just stay on the fetch chain,
No, they don't.
because
Actually, the infographics on the website actually show that quite clearly. I checked them out. Some of the
yeah,
agents are on chain, others are off chain. That's where I asked the scalability question earlier. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good
because
point. Mm.
they can be able to be brought over to other chains. And so we have
Mhm.
mentioned even as well before that, you know, the idea of leveraging even the fetch network for other chains, that's why it's so nice for us, because we don't have
Yes.
to feel like we're not telling people, hey, stop going into those other ecosystems, you know, oh, we're
Mm.
the best, we're the best. We're
Okay.
saying building on chain like natively absolutely comes with its benefits,
Mhm.
especially with, you know, like how insanely cheap, even in the Cosmos ecosystem. I think that our transaction fees are still one of the lowest in the entire
Oh,
ecosystem.
oh,
And
and that comes
so
with building the quality of the actual chain. You
yeah.
know.
And so because of
Mm.
that, it's extremely low to be able to actually pay for the transactions on chain. And we still, like, for a close enough example, even for like Juno network, like we run the permissionless CosmWasm smart contracts just like they do. We're built Cosmos SDK just like they have. And then we also have, like, obviously, like the automation part that's built on top of it. And so it's kind of like, I guess, the perfect dream of what most people look at if they were to think of like what they wanted for a Cosmos chain to really to achieve is to
Are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that Fetch is matching up with the Atom Hub or Cosmos Hub or the other part of Cosmos?
I wouldn't say that we're matching up with Cosmos Hub, because the hub does serve its own kind of special purpose, I would say.
True.
It's kind of the testing ground, like for all features that will end up going. The only thing that it has remained the non-tester of, and in fact voted against to be the tester of, is CosmWasm. It doesn't utilize CosmWasm permissionless smart contracts. I actually forget what it is that I think, like, what it utilizes. But it's basic.
You mean Atom Hub, the Cosmos Hub?
Yeah, the Cosmos Hub does not run CosmWasm smart contracts, and they actually voted against utilizing and integrating CosmWasm. And the main idea behind that they had said was essentially that they want the Cosmos Hub to be as simplistic as possible.
Okay,
and
I get it.
So because of that, that was why they ended up doing that. So I would say that it's a bit of the testing ground for the entire Cosmos ecosystem, and like
they want to be like the Bitcoin of the Cosmos ecosystem. Sort of keep the chain simple. Don't add any other upgrades. This and that.
And that's kind of they just want native to their chain, like, things that are being built. And I mean, even now, there's, I can't remember what it's called, but there's going to be there's another chain basically that's going to be building a stable coin that utilizes Atom as reserve, like in the Cosmos ecosystem. So yeah, they've very much clarified that they do not just have the simple burn to mint mechanism that Terra had. They've made it very clear. They've put out charts and stuff of showing that's not at all the intention. I believe it's being made by the Interchain Foundation, which is a part of the hub staff, I guess, if you could even call it that. It's quite difficult to track who works technically for them. But yeah, no, I would say that for Fetch, we've kind of carved out our niche, and that's what the Cosmos is honestly all about, is that you look at all the chains and most of them are app chains, or they're like, they have niche specific like goals in mind. Like as in Osmosis being like kind of they call themselves like the interchain, like DEX is their thing. They're the hub DEX.
That's a beautiful thing about the Cosmos ecosystem, because Fetch.ai has to compete with Juno, it has to compete with Atom, it has to compete with Osmosis. Unlike for example, if you look at Ethereum, it's more linear. All transactions have to go through Ethereum, everything has to go through that linear path. But with Cosmos, it's spread out just by nature of the way it's built. So that's amazing. It's amazing. It's really clever that things you've said, they fit into that narrative, they fit into the idea of what Fetch was trying to build. So that's amazing. That's really,
and that's why we kind of want to know, like, let people know as well, and even let the ecosystem as a whole know that, you know, we exist, is because we're still living by that vision. We're not like an app chain where we have just like one specific application that is the entire purpose of the chain.
The entire purpose, right?
Yeah, but we do have like a niche specific purpose, like the automation aspect, machine learning, and like AI. Like that is what our core goal is. Sure, you can like just build using the permissionless, CosmWasm smart contracts. You could just build a regular like platform. But our hope is to be able to allow people to utilize like the AI aspects of these things. And that's the thing as well, is that we're very excited about that type of stuff. And even in a very short amount of time as well. I think it's actually even featured, if I'm not wrong, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to check out the full details of the what our workshops are about at Consensus and stuff. But
I've read the documentaries. It's the write up. It's very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. It's nice to see that some of the stuff that you've been talking about is being brought to actually be presented on Consensus.
So that's one of the key aspects, is that for the people who are going to be there to attend, we can't say that there will be stuff shown that has not been publicly shown yet. Right. And so That's one of the things, is that we're very excited, because like that's the thing, is that although some applications, and actually this kind of touches on a little bit of your point from earlier about in terms of how Fetch has kind of been, growing, or applications coming to the chain and whatnot, and just building in general, and how that's slowly been changing over the last little bit, is obviously before it was a situation where maybe once every 6 months or so, a new application was coming out on Fetch, or a new thing was kind of being released. And that is about to rapidly change. There are going to be applications. Our hope, honestly, if we could have it the way that we want it, we would love to see, like, even possibly by end of year, seeing, like, in the last couple of months, like 5 applications releasing per month. Like, if we could even have something as quickly as that developing, we have a lot of, as I said, it's perfect with the fund. We're in talks with many projects that are interested, and right now we even have some projects that, well, obviously we've announced, like Starfleet, that's coming out next month. I was about to say this month because I wasn't sure if it was the 1st or the 31st.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But
yeah. So it's like tomorrow is next month.
Exactly. So we will see Starfleet like launching, which will be exciting. And
That's
then we
interesting.
also,
That's a decentralized DAO on Fetch. Okay. Yeah. Continue.
yeah, that's the DEX that's going to be like built over
DEX,
there.
rather.
Yeah, and we haven't released too many details about that, because that team is still building, and we want to give them the opportunity. We will be obviously in very, I would say very soon-ish, we'll be revealing like the team as who actually has made it. I think people will be quite surprised. But also on top of that, we want to be able to provide more information and stuff about like what their plans are.
Can I guess? Is it 8baller?
No.
Okay. For those that don't know 8baller, it's an insider. Anyway, it's another a person from the Fetch ecosystem. This ghost genius. Anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so we have a bunch of applications that we're planning on releasing, and we want to really push, like, I would say right now, the one thing, I love the Cosmos ecosystem. I cannot say that enough. I love everything. I love the idea of even IBC. I think it's amazing, the technology that is built there. But the one thing that I think that a lot of people would probably agree with is that there are not that many right now in your hands usable applications that you can actually go out and do. You can get a bunch of tokens off of like like dexes and stuff, but that's the one thing that Fetch has been like relatively consistent with, is you can go out right now and you can make a Resonate account. You can go and use our social media application. You want to use Move to earn, go download Mobix right this second and start getting Mobix rewards. You don't have to wait 6 months for us to announce an announcement of an announcement for there to be something that is maybe coming out. We have projects that exist right now and are continuing to develop. Like even Mobix has been out for, I think, 6-7 months at this point.
And it's a fully running application, dude. Like it's a lot of people using it all over the world. It's insane. You can amazing. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, for sure. Their team is awesome, and you can utilize like these things, right now. And I think that that's one of the big aspects that we kind of want to push to the Cosmos ecosystem is saying like, we really want to get our names out there, because we're showing people like any application built on any chain in the ecosystem should be seen as a success for the whole ecosystem, because it's kind of proving that the backbone, the tech is working, and that the tech is attractive. And so I think that that's something that we really are trying to get out there a lot more, is like at Fetch, we are pushing for applications to be usable, to have things that come out. And even though it's taken a bit of time to get a little bit more momentum on these things going, we're still happy and proud of the fact that we have working applications, and that we've released products that are functional. And so, yeah, that's the goal, is we want to put things in people's hands.
Right, and yet it's almost like you haven't even started. I mean, the mainnet launched, and there's already all these products, and it's not even a hype thing. It's not that they're that's pretty interesting. And the fact that you keep saying that they're different teams, I mean, if you look at Mobix, it's a different team. If you look at Resonate, it's a different team.
Yep.
That's very exciting because each team is focused on that particular product, and it's not going to go in the way of the development of the core technologies of the Fetch blockchain. So, I mean, John, you've done an amazing job. I mean, I think these guys picked the perfect person to be the spokesperson, because you understand the technical stuff. You're very good at communicating it, the simple and the technical stuff. So that's amazing. But all that you've said, what conclusion can you give us before we conclude this? What's the final word you can give the people here?
Yeah. Well, I would say that the final word is that everything that we've had, like, already released to you guys is just the literal tip of the iceberg, and we are extremely excited to be able to show more of what's to come, and especially if you are a person who loves keeping up to date with what Fetch has been doing, I highly recommend that you check out our Twitter Spaces sessions or listen to them after the fact, especially if you are a fan of the collective learning stuff that we've been working on. The next Twitter Spaces that is happening tomorrow, like, well, I guess depending on when this releases, you may be able to actually just go back and listen to the recording, but it'll be on the 1st of June.
Before you finish, could you just hint a little bit about collective learning? Because it's one of the most, I think, important aspects that I forgot to ask about. I mean, you did talk about it. It's AI, machine learning. Could you just briefly talk about it in the conclusion? Maybe something the listeners might want to listen or to learn about this collective learning.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not super technical on collective learning because I'm not part of that team. But the thing that I can say, like, from what I do understand at least about collective learning, is that the entire point of it is supposed to be that there are current existing centralized options. I don't know if, like, how familiar many people are with these ideas and stuff, but collective learning and stuff, or the idea of collaborative learning, isn't necessarily a new concept, because there's things like, I think Google Colab is one of the biggest ones, like Colab Notebook, I think is what they call it. And it allows it where you're able to utilize servers, like other servers that are doing these things to help you with your machine learning stuff. So if you don't want to have to, once again, run the infrastructure and whatnot, you can do that. But the downside is that you don't own the model, like, after, like, when you're utilizing a centralized server owned by Google.
Right. Okay, so you can get all these machine learning interpretations, but you don't own the model. So you can't do anything beyond that use case that you've searched for, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that, like, also, once again, it's quite expensive, like, to be able to actually, like, utilize those platforms and stuff. Like, I have even just myself, like, looked at it, and if I was just a random person who was working minimum wage and coding on the side, you would not be able to afford, even just Google Colab Notebook, you would not be able to afford a yearly subscription to that. It is so expensive. And so the point of, as I said, with the Fetch network, everything is decentralized, everything is shared. So when you're running on the network, like, you're paying for fees, of course, to be able to utilize the network, but with the fees being so insignificant, it kind of allows for this broader utility in that, where you don't have to be, somebody who's working a super expensive job to be able to afford to use the technology we're going to be putting out.
The technology. Right.
Yeah, and not only that, but there is the aspect that, and I think that it's been kind of briefly mentioned before, and if not, it might just be still a working concept. But even just the idea, as I said, about the whole not owning your model thing, like, we want to change that, where you're, like, actually owning the model, and potentially, if you even wanted to sell that model that already exists, like, somebody else.
I think. Wait, does Fetch have a partnership with what's this blockchain? It's one of the best. Ocean Protocol? Is it Ocean Protocol?
I believe that we have a partnership with Ocean Protocol through Catena X.
Through Catena X, right? Yes, through Catena. Okay. Anyway, that's another topic for another.
They're a whole nother ballpark.
Right.
So yeah, but in total, I would say that's the best, like, description that I can give of the utility there, because machine learning is, like, it's so important. Like, as I said, even with the idea of, like, trying to be able to identify things before they happen, or being able to take a model that you feed. Actually, something that John mentioned on his Twitter with the collapse of Terra, was he had said, imagine if instead of just kind of putting together these game mechanics, which is what, like, even DeFi, it is a game. Like, you're usually trying to find a way. Yeah, like DeFi is a bit of a game where it's like you have a person on one end buying and a person on the other end selling, or you might have two people buying, one person selling. So that there's like a mechanic that you kind of have to work out. And John had kind of suggested, and he actually even hinted at the idea that this could potentially be a thing that is developed in the future. At the idea that why just guess? Why just hope for the best with a game system? That it will end up working and then fall apart and collapse like Terra, when you could use a machine learning model. You give it like inputs, tell it like under market conditions of X, Y, and Z that these are the certain things that you want to account for, and then see which model performed the best and apply that game mechanism to your stablecoin. And so there is, even in DeFi, even DeFi has its utility of something like machine learning. Almost every single aspect, like Web3 will absolutely have a deep need for machine learning because we are walking uncharted territory. Like everything that's being developed, there is zero reason like that exists. There's no documented proof for why the things that exist should function the way that they do. It's pretty much
AI.
Yeah, it's hoping for the best. And so I think that kind of removing that, and I think that's kind of scary to a lot of people as well, is the idea that like a lot of these things happen like that. So I think, at the end of the day, machine learning and what we're like kind of building, like what is able to be built with CoLearn is quite important in a lot of ways. And I think that a lot of people will end up being able to utilize this. And the hope is obviously not only that companies will be able to apply these factors into their own stuff, but that even regular people who just do regular things are able to utilize the stuff as well. And so, within this year, there'll be a lot more updates in regards to CoLearn. Next Twitter Spaces, as I said, you'll be able to learn more about it on, I think tomorrow on June 1st, we're doing the Twitter Spaces for that. So I would absolutely recommend listening in or going back and listening to the recording of it, because there are going to be some updates in regards to that I think many people will be very excited about, because all I can say is that it's not too far away from people getting their hands on something. So I think that there is a lot for people to look forward to, and we're very, very excited for what's been going on. Because, of course, collective learning, every time that we make announcements, everybody wants to know more about what is happening with CoLearn, what is going on. So we're going to start providing a lot more updates on CoLearn going forward. So,
wow, there you go. I mean, essentially what I've gotten is that there's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot that could be missed even within the discussion, and there's a lot that has been covered throughout the whole growth process of Fetch.ai. There's just so much that has been done, so much that's being done as well. And I mean, the sky's the limit right now. Be overly ambitious. They say, I guess work fast and move fast and break things. Fetch.ai seems to be doing that, but under radar, and also focusing on building the core technology, making it fine. So guys, there you go. John, or Atari Buzzkill, you can find him on social media. As a final thing, actually, I shouldn't speak for that. Could you mention where people can find you, because they may want to follow up on all the things you've said?
Yeah, for sure. Basically, you can find me on pretty much everything, like at Atari_Buzz and then K1LL. You'll be able to find me over on like Twitter and Telegram. I also am on our Discord server. If you haven't joined there yet, then you can do that as well. And I guess I can say as a final outro thing, basically the unofficial slogan, and I'll say unofficial because obviously absolutely zero questions have been asked about it, but the unofficial slogan for Fetch that we've pretty much been moving with at the company is something along the lines of like, basically build first, market later. We want to make sure we
build first, market later. Okay.
We got products that exist, get them in people's hands, then worry about like the marketing on a mass scale. So Yeah,
Wow.
so you can look
That's
forward to
something
that.
very hard to do for a lot of companies in the crypto space. So that's
Yeah.
big. That's
You can trust that Fetch 100% of the time has focus on actually making sure that the products you have are secure, protected, and usable. Then we
that's
will make sure that we get out to the masses.
that's very assuring. That's very, very assuring. That's really cool. It's very good, especially in this space. If you want to look out for the teams and the product quality stuff, that's very good to hear that kind of assurance. All right, John. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, to talk to the people out there, and educating us about Fetch.ai. Amazing stuff that I've learned today. Amazing stuff that the community is learning as well. And we look forward to listening to more of the Twitter spaces and everything that's going to come. We also can't wait for the consensus event where Fetch.ai will be showcasing their stuff, the technology that they've been working on, or at least some of the ideas that they've been building. So thank you so much for being on my show, John. It was really good.
Yeah, I was very happy to be able to come on, and yeah, I hope your audience is able to pull whatever information they want out of this, and that it was expansive enough. And who knows, if there's more developments in due time, then and you end up deciding you want to have me on again at another point,
Of
then
course.
you can always reach out because we've got a connection now.
Yes.
So yeah,
Nice. I would appreciate that. Yes. Yeah.
all right. Well, yeah,
Okay.
thanks for having me on.
All right. I'm glad to have you on, John. Have a good one.